Welcome back. Today we are going to talk about scene drama. In the last lesson we talked about difficult people, and there's definitely a lot of overlap here, but we're going to focus on specific types of drama, although that word has become quite the buzzword lately. Okay, so as I mentioned in the responsibilities of leadership video, it is important to know what is not your responsibility, and it is essentially especially crucial for when you're dealing with scene drama, because there are certain things that you can and should get involved with, and there are certain things that you really should not. So we'll talk about those. Let's go. Okay, so here's just kind of a rundown of some different types of scene drama that I've experienced and that others have experienced. Domestic disputes, political clashes, generational differences, cliques, banning issues and private invitations and some of the emotional responses that can go with those, misogyny, and any other sort of prejudice behavior, controversial scenes and types of play, and disrespecting others' identities and interests. Okay, now there's also online drama, and I'm going to do a separate video for that because that really deserves its own treatment, because it can be its own monster, and it can also be used in conjunction with more in-person drama. Okay, so that's going to get its own video. I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. All right, so we'll start with domestic disputes. Please remember that it is not your job to pass judgment or get involved. I know that it can be difficult, particularly if you are in a closer relationship with one person or the other, but as a leader, you need to suspend those personal feelings and not muddy the waters. If it's a criminal act that's been committed, then they need to deal with that in the best way that they should, whether it's a police, a lawyer, they need to call their own mediator, whatever it is. But if it really is a criminal act, then you need to, and someone has come to you as a leader and has said, this is something that has happened and I don't know what to do, those should be your suggestions, because there's really only so far you can go. Now, of course, this right now is tied particularly to abuse allegations, and that is really tricky, and I'm going to figure out another way to address it than this video, because abuse allegations do need to be dealt with, and the responses to, oh, you should just call the police, the responses that have said stuff like, well, police are judgmental about BDSM, and sometimes it's too complicated for all of that, whatever. All of those things really can be true. But the point is that you are not the judge, jury, and executioner, so please do not deem yourself so. And if it is not a criminal act and something must be done about it, choose someone who is truly neutral regarding the situation to be a mediator. And again, if you are in a leadership position and you have some vested interest in one party or the other, you should not be the mediator. You can help pick the mediator and choose someone who you truly think will be fair to listening to both sides. That's what will make you a great leader and not a personal agenda sort of leader, okay, which ends up you end up in the toilet that way. Okay, so find a mediator for domestic disputes. Political clashes. This usually happens when either one person or a subgroup of a larger group has a different political, moral view or, plan that is different than the rest of the group. I have definitely seen this happen. One example that comes to mind in the D.C. area, I know a lot of people in that area. Black Rose has been there for a very long time, and there have been a couple of subsets of groups that have developed from those groups because they didn't agree with all of the rules that Black Rose were enforcing. And so some examples of that is sex and play, or drinking and play. Those are two very hot buttons and tend to have very hot responses. You know, should sex be allowed in the dungeon? What are the rules that should be allowed? Sometimes I've heard friends say that there is penis discrimination in dungeons that allow sex and play that, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'm sure you can extrapolate. And on a different note, a lot of times the problem is what the future of the organization or event should be. And that's where it really becomes quite a bit more political, truly, rather than moral, which is what the other ones I would say would be. And speaking of that can come from generational differences. Old guard is kind of another buzzword, an umbrella term that's now used for people that are simply of the last generation. Of course, old guard in the leather world has a very specific meaning, but a lot of people use it quite a bit more, non-specifically. But the bottom line is that there's an older group that has been doing things a certain way, and that maybe there's a younger generation that wants to come in and change things or improve things as they think they should be improved, or that they would be an improvement. So those kinds of generational differences can be challenging and have their own ways of being dealt with. Okay, cliques. It's human nature to form groups. It is unfortunate when it's used for segregation rather than collaboration, but it happens. It's been happening since we were in grade school, and has continued and will continue. People just naturally just form cliques, and hopefully you can figure out who can be a bridge. For example, in high school, I was a bridge. I was a total theater geek, a thespian, and was very involved in my theater group, but unlike a lot of my friends in the theater group, I also had friends in the sports areas and cheerleaders and some of the more academic-focused places, because I got along with a lot of different kinds of people, and not everyone in the theater did. So I was a good bridge between those cliques. Gossip. Gossip comes along with cliques usually. Also, again, started when we were young, never goes away. Never. One thing about gossip that I will say that's not here on this little slide is that I learned when I was young. I had a lot of gossip, lots and lots of gossip told about me, is that I have made the choice that if I say something to someone, even someone that I feel really, really, really close to, I probably don't want to say anything that I wouldn't say if that person was standing right there in front of me, because relationships change and people may not be as trustworthy as you think they are, or their trustworthiness changes if you no longer have a relationship, yada yada yada. So I just don't say anything that I wouldn't say in front of that person. Now, I'm a very direct individual, and so that's not difficult for me, because most of the things that I have to say, I would say and do say directly to the people. But that's different for others. And so make sure that you either have as safe a possible a space to express yourself, or just don't say it. Okay, so how do you deal with other people gossiping about you? You can completely ignore it. You can just not acknowledge it, not have it be a problem. Kind of a random association with that is Marie Antoinette. It's been said that she's the first victim of kind of public, oh, I'm screwing it up, that not propaganda, but essentially the social media of the times were tearing her down. They were writing all of these things about her, that she was in all these orgies and all kinds of stuff, and she chose to ignore it. She ended up beheaded. Is there correlation? I don't know. So you can completely ignore it. That is a way to deal with it, and it is a completely valid way. You can deal with it directly with the people involved. Now, of course, the mere nature of gossip is that it is a grapevine. But if you either know or can find out who is at the root of that gossip, go directly to those people. Whether it's an email, whether it's a request for a personal interaction, deal directly with them. Don't attack them. Don't verbally, I hear that you're saying this about me, and I think that's never a helpful way to talk to people. And so instead, take a more respectful approach, and to say, even though you know or you think that they're disrespecting you, try to take the approach, try to take a deep breath and go to them and say, so I've heard through the grapevine that you are saying these certain things about me, and I'd like to talk to you about it. Sometimes people speak out of ignorance. Some people speak out of anger. There's a lot of reasons why people gossip. Some people gossip just because they like to gossip. They like to, they like to feel like they're in everybody's business. I'm sure we all know someone like that. And then you can also go public to defend yourself. That can go really, really well, or it can backfire, because then it can also can kind of stir the pot. So definitely below, I want you to talk about how you've dealt with gossip before, because I can't imagine I can't think of anyone that I know that has not dealt with some kind of gossip, whether it's you having gossiped and having it be discovered, or having someone gossiped about you. And what are the upsides and the downsides of the ways to deal with gossip that I've mentioned here? Okay. Banning and private invitations. This one I think is more simple than people make it. Talk to the quote-unquote problem person. Be tactful. I'm going to repeat that throughout this entire program. And to just be respectful, that no matter how someone else is treating you, and let me tell you, I have a temper, I am passionate, I am opinionated, but when I can take a deep breath and be respectful, even and in spite of when someone is not being respectful to me, that is more in line with my own integrity, and quite frankly, it's just more efficient. Because it's more probable that the other person will start to feel like an even bigger asshole because you're being nice and they are not. Not everyone, but some people. But it is important to remember that some people are really vindictive. I was in Boston for a very long time, and having dungeons shut down because of other people's issues was a major problem. I didn't allow, when I had a dungeon as a professional dominatrix, I didn't allow traveling pro-doms or local pro-doms to rent my space, because I was, I'd heard of a number of other dungeons that had been closed down because one dom sent one of their submissives to see another dom, find out where their dungeon was, and then called the cops on them. Yay, fun. Also, some public dungeons have been, public, I use the term loosely, of course, have been closed down for similar reasons. Somebody was asked not to return for a party and called the fire department and got them closed down on, on technicalities, okay? So try to get an idea of who you're banning and how their response might be. Talk to people who know them. And again, the more respectful that you are, make suggestions about where else they can go to fulfill the need that they're trying to get out of your party or group. And just be as nice as you can about it. Misogyny. there's frankly not a lot for me to say about that right now. It's going to ruffle feathers, but it's a problem in the world at large, and that is completely true in smaller groups as well. And misogyny is not just it. It's any kind of prejudice. Misogyny is, of course, the prejudice against women, that men are the superior creatures. But there are lots of prejudice. There are prejudice based on your skin tone, your religion, the interests you're in, any of those things. So, you know, those kinds of issues are not going to go away, and you can, I'm sure, Google some responses that work in the world at large that will be applicable. Okay, controversial scenes and types of play. This really mostly applies to event planners and play-focused social gathering. This is also much more easy than people, I think, usually think it is. Make it very clear what the rules are. Use a sign-in waiver that state the rules, and use a large font. Don't try to fit it all on one page if it doesn't fit on one page by scrunching all of the words together. Make it readable. In fact, I used to go to a party in Boston where you actually had to initial next to each individual paragraph that described a rule. That's a great idea. Even and above that, post the rules, or at least the most important ones, in large font around the play space. You can get yourself a cheap little laminator at Target or any other box type store and laminate the signs so they'll be ready for every party. But put the basic rules in large font around the play space. And then when it comes to specifically controversial scenes, such as consensual non-consent, age play for some, blood play for some, fire play, you know, there's a lot of controversial scenes. Just make a little sign that you can, again, you know, laminate it. Just make simple signs that says, this scene has been approved by the party planners, please don't interrupt. Because a lot of times, people will see these scenes happening, and they just won't know whether or not it's okay or it's not okay. And as long as it's been that the two or more people that have spoken to you have said, yes, this is a consensual scene, but it might ruffle some feathers, and you approve it, then give them that little sign, and it'll keep other people from getting involved. Okay, disrespecting others' identities and interests. This is also an issue at the world at large. You know, there's always, human nature loves hierarchies, and so there's always, well, I'm this, so I'm better than you. It is frequently a matter of ignorance rather than conscientious disrespect, and if it is conscientious disrespect, then I suggest just not interacting with that person, or at least not giving that person any power over you and your emotions. Just because someone doesn't understand you or doesn't respect your gender identity or your sexual identity or, you know, your personal beliefs, that doesn't mean that, you know, you have to engage with them. Just, you know, just don't. I know that's, you know, seems kind of simple, but you can even be in the same space with someone. There are people that, there are very few people on my shit list, but like really a very, very, very small people. But when I'm in the same room with them, I just, you know, act as if they literally don't exist. Not in kind of a rude, snobby sort of way, but just in a, you know, if I move next to them, I either just don't look them in the eye, keep your head held high, but, you know, you don't have to make eye contact if that's going to be a trigger for you. You know, or if you can, smile and nod, and just move the fuck on, to be honest. Now, when it's a matter of ignorance, try just making a polite correction. For example, I am working very hard to, and continue to work very hard, to respect people's gender identities. I was raised in a gender, you know, a bi, it's kind of sad that I'm having a hard time thinking of what that word is, yeah, you know what I mean. So the not bipolar, because that's not the word, but where there's two genders. That's the world that I grew up in. And as a cis female, which is probably a term that will be out of date by the time other people get to this, but I'm a cis female that identifies as a female. And so it's difficult for me to emotionally connect to the idea of a fluid gender or a difference in gender experience. See, I still don't even have the right, that I struggle to find the right words with it, right? And so it's not out of disrespect. Sometimes, you know, I know a number of trans people that were one gender, quote unquote, before, and then another gender, quote unquote, after. And I'll slip up sometimes, you know. In fact, Lee Harrington is a wonderful example of this. I knew Lee Harrington when Lee was Bridget, and it took me a while to start calling Bridget Lee, and to really to start seeing Bridget as Lee, a male. And so sometimes I would slip up. I particularly when Lee was in the more transitional phase, I would slip up and say, "Oh, Lee, she wants to such and such." And if Lee was there, Lee would just say very, you know, quietly and politely, "He." And I'd say, "Oh my God, yes, he." There we go. Because it was not out of disrespect. It was just a slip of the tongue. And it happens. And so please understand that there are a lot of people that are not trying to be rude. They just are trying to communicate. So try to have some compassion when that's the case. And again, and if they don't get it, distance yourself. That's it. Don't put yourself through it. Okay, so I'm sure that I have not covered all of the types of scene drama. And again, I'm going to be doing a online drama video separately. And so please feel free to describe other types of scene drama that you have dealt with before, or that you know of, etc. And any specific ways that you have dealt with things, any of these types of drama. And quite frankly, some of us have dealt with all of these types of drama. And the fact that we continue on is a testament to our stubbornness, aka masochisticness. Just kidding. Okay, so I look forward to your comments, and I will see you next time.